Hi, everybody. Remember where we left off? Here's little Despereaux meeting Princess P. Thanks for joining me again to read some Tale of Despereaux. I'm in my office today. I came by to check on the campus. Everything looks just fine. Are you cozy? You ready to get reading again? Okay, we are on chapter 5, What Furlough Saw. Who's Furlough? Do you remember? Right, Despereaux's brother. Okay, what Furlough saw. Here we go. The Princess P looked down at Despereaux. She smiled at him, and while her father played another song, a song about the deep purple falling over sleepy garden walls, the princess reached out and touched the top of the mouse's head. Despereaux stared up at her in wonder. The P, he decided, looked just like the picture of the fair maiden in the book in the library. The princess smiled at Despereaux again, and this time Despereaux smiled back. And then something incredible happened. The mouse fell in love. So sweet. Reader, you may ask this question. In fact, you must ask this question. Is it ridiculous for a very small, sickly, big-eared mouse to fall in love with a beautiful human princess named P? The answer is yes. Of course, it's ridiculous. Love is ridiculous. But love is also wonderful and powerful. And Despereaux's love for the Princess P would prove in time to be all of these things: powerful, wonderful, and ridiculous. You're so sweet, said the princess to Despereaux. You're so tiny. As Despereaux looked up at her adoringly, Furlough happened to scurry past the princess's room, moving his head left to right, right to left, back and forth, like a good mouse. Cripes, said Furlough. He stopped. He stared into the princess's room. His whiskers became as tight as bowstrings. What Furlough saw was Despereaux Tilling sitting at the foot of the king. What Furlough saw was the princess touching the top of his brother's head. Cripes, shouted Furlough again. Oh, Cripes, he's nuts. He's a goner. And, executing a classic scurry, Furlough went off to tell his father, Lester Tilling, the terrible, unbelievable news of what he had just seen. Uh-oh. That was the end of chapter 5. What do you think? Chapter 6? Okay, let's do it. Chapter 6 is called This Drum. This drum. I don't know. Okay, now we are in a scene here with the mother and father of Despereaux. Ready? He simply cannot be my son, Lester said. He clutched his whiskers with his front paws and shook his head from side to side in despair. Of course he is your son, said Antoinette. What do you mean he is not your son? This is a ridiculous statement. Why must you always make the ridiculous statements? You, said Lester, this is your fault. The French blood in him has made him crazy. C'est moi, said Antoinette. C'est moi? Why must always be I who takes the blame? If your son is such a disappointment, it is as much your fault as mine. Side note from Miss Van Housen. Not very nice parenting. Anyway, I love Despereaux. Okay, back to Lester. Something must be done, said Lester. He pulled on a whisker so hard it came loose. He waved the whisker over his head. He pointed it at his wife. He will be the end of us all, he shouted, sitting at the foot of a human king. Unbelievable, unthinkable. Oh, so dramatic, said Antoinette. She held out one paw and studied her painted nails. He is a small mouse. How much of the harm can he do? If there is one thing I have learned in this world, said Lester, it is that mice must act like mice, or else there is bound to be trouble. I will call a special meeting of the Mouse Council. Together, we will decide what must be done. Oh, said Antoinette, you and this Council of the Mouse, it is a waste of the time, in my opinion. Don't you understand? Shouted Lester. He must be punished. He must be brought up for the tribunal. He pushed past her and dug furiously through a pile of paper scraps until he uncovered a thimble with a piece of leather stretched across its open end. Oh, please, said Antoinette. She covered her ears. Not this drum of the Council of the Mouse. That's funny. It's a little thimble with a little leather on it that makes a little drum. Hee hee. Okay, back to the story. Yes, said Lester, the drum. He held it up high above his head, first to the north, and then to the south, and then to the east, and then to the west. He lowered it and turned it back to his wife and closed his eyes and took a deep breath and began to beat the drum slowly. One long beat with his tail, two staccato beats with his paws. Boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat. The rhythm of the drum was a signal for the members of the Mouse Council. Boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat, boom. The beating of the drum let them know that an important decision would have to be made, one that affected the safety and well-being of the entire mouse community. Boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat, boom. That was the end of chapter 6. I don't know. Are we worried about Despereaux? His parents? What are his parents saying? He's not acting like a mouse. So they're calling the Mouse Council together. What do you think? Should we go on to chapter 7? I have time. Let's go one more chapter today. Yeah? Chapter 7, A Mouse in Love. Ooh la la. Here we go. And what was our own favorite member of the mouse community doing while the sound of the Mouse Council drum echoed through the walls of the castle? Reader, I must report that Furlough had not seen the worst of it. Despereaux sat with the princess and the king and listened to song after song. At one point, gently, oh so gently, the pea picked up the mouse in her hand. She cupped him in her palm and stretched his oversized ears. You have lovely ears, the pea said to him. They are like small pieces of velvet. Despereaux thought that he might faint with the pleasure of someone referring to his ears as small and lovely. He laid his tail against the pea's wrist to steady himself, and he felt the princess's pulse, the pounding of her heart, and his own heart immediately took up the rhythm of hers. Papa, said P when the music was over. I am going to keep this mouse. We are going to be great friends. The king looked at Despereaux, cupped in his daughter's hands. He narrowed his eyes. A mouse? He muttered. A rodent. What? Said the pea. Put it down, the king commanded. No, said the pea, who was a person not at all used to being told what to do. I mean, why should I? Because I told you to. But why? Protested the pea. Because it's a mouse. I know. I'm the one who told you he was a mouse. I wasn't thinking, said the king. Thinking of what? Your mother, the queen. My mother, said the pea sadly. Mice are rodents, said the king. He adjusted his crown. They are related to rats. You know how we feel about rats. You know of your own dark history with rats. The pea shuddered. But Papa, she said, he is not a rat. He's a mouse. There's a difference. Royalty, the king said, has many responsibilities, and one of them is not becoming involved personally with even the distant relatives of one's enemies. Put him down, P. The princess put Despereaux down. Good girl, said the king, and then he looked at Despereaux. Scat, he said. Despereaux, however, did not scat. He sat and stared up at the princess. The king stamped his foot. Scat, he shouted. Papa, said the princess, please don't be mean to him. And she began to weep. Despereaux, seeing her tears, broke the last of the great ancient rules of mice. He spoke to the human. Oh boy. Please, said Despereaux, don't cry. He held out his handkerchief to the princess. The pea sniffed and leaned down close to him. Do not speak to her, thundered the king. Despereaux dropped his handkerchief. He backed away from the king. Rodents do not speak to princesses. We will not have this becoming a topsy-turvy, wrong-headed world. There are rules. Scat! Get lost before my common sense turns and I have you killed. The king stamped his foot again. Despereaux found it alarming to have such a big foot brought down with so much force and anger so close to his small head. He ran toward the hole in the wall. But he turned before he entered it. He turned and shouted to the princess, My name is Despereaux. Despereaux, she said. I honor you, shouted Despereaux. I honor you was what the knight said to the fair maiden in the story that Despereaux read every day in the book in the library. Despereaux had muttered the phrase often to himself, but he had never before this evening had occasion to use it when speaking to someone else. Get out of here, shouted the king, stamping his foot harder and then harder still, so it seemed as if the whole castle, the very world, were shaking. Rodents know nothing of honor. Despereaux ran into the hole, and from there he looked out at the princess. She had picked up his handkerchief, and she was looking at him right directly into his soul. Despereaux, she said. He saw his name on her lips. I honor you, whispered Despereaux. I honor you. He put his paw over his heart. He bowed so low that his whiskers touched the floor. He was, alas, a mouse deeply in love. Bye for now.